All right, today we're going to build the architect's blueprint for taming your multi-cloud Kubernetes environment. We're talking about universal governance.
So, let me ask you something, straight up. Does your multi-cloud platform feel a bit like the Wild West? Kind of chaotic, unpredictable? If you're even nodding a little bit, then you are in exactly the right place.
Because see, you're the architect, and your whole job is to bring order to that chaos. It's about turning that unpredictable mess into a stable, efficient platform where real innovation can happen. So, let's get right into it. What's the actual challenge that we, as multi-cloud architects, are really up against? Well, it almost always comes down to three things. First, you've got the noisy neighbor problem. One team's app goes rogue, eats up all the resources, and suddenly another team's critical service is down. That chaos quickly leads to unpredictable costs. You get those monthly bills that just spike out of nowhere. And the end result of all that, just a ton of development friction, where your teams are actually scared to deploy new stuff. So how do we fix this? How do we fight back against all this chaos? Well, it all comes down to one single powerful principle: governance.
Now, I'm not talking about some vague corporate buzzword. I mean applying a universal set of rules for how resources get used. And not just in one cloud, but the same rules, applied consistently everywhere. One source of truth for your whole platform.
And I can practically hear you thinking it right now. Hold on a second. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they all do things their own way. How on earth can you create a single source of truth across all of them? You know what? That's the perfect question. And it's the exact problem we're here to solve.
The answer to that question is our universal blueprint. And the foundation, the cornerstone of this entire strategy is the simple but incredibly powerful namespace quota.
Now, the most important words on this screen are native Kubernetes tool. A namespace quota is not some third-party thing you have to go buy or some complicated new system to learn. Nope. It is built right into the core of Kubernetes itself. It just lets you put a hard cap on the total resources any one namespace is allowed to use. And we use this native tool to control three main things. First, CPU limits. That's the raw processing power for your apps. Second, memory limits. That's the working space, the RAM, where your apps get things done. And third, persistent volume claims, or PVCs. That's just your permanent storage where all the data lives.
And this is where that whole property lines idea really clicks. Imagine your cluster as this big open field. Using quotas is like putting up fences and drawing clear property lines for each team. They get their own plot of land, they can build a skyscraper or a tiny shed inside their own lines, but they absolutely cannot start building on their neighbor's lawn. It just stops that noisy neighbor problem dead in its tracks.
Okay, so the blueprint makes sense. Now for the million-dollar question. How do we actually make this work across all those different cloud environments we were just talking about?
So if you look here, you'll see something pretty cool. On AWS EKS and on Google's GKE, you're using the standard resource quotas object directly. It is what it is. Now Azure, they like to wrap things up in what they call limits and tie it into their Azure policy engine. But, and this is the key part, if you peek under the hood, it is still the exact same native Kubernetes concept driving it all.
And that is the whole point right there. The mechanism is Kubernetes native. Forget about the different brand names. You're speaking one universal language, the language of Kubernetes, to all three major clouds. This is how you get real consistency.
So, we've figured out the how, but what about the why? What's the big payoff for doing all this work? Well, the goal we're driving towards is true team isolation. Just look at this. This right here, this is the beautiful end result. Your total cluster resources are no longer some chaotic free-for-all. They are neatly, predictably partitioned. Team Apollo has its slice, Team Hermes has theirs, and Team Athena has theirs. Each one has its own predictable, guaranteed pool of resources.
And that's not just a pretty chart, right? This translates directly into real business value. Developer autonomy shoots through the roof because teams can work safely in their own sandbox. Costs become predictable because you can finally see who's using what. And maybe the most important thing of all, the entire platform gets rock-solid stability.
This is a fundamental shift in thinking. With these clear boundaries in place, your teams aren't walking on eggshells anymore. They are empowered to build, to experiment, to innovate, because they know they can't break things for everybody else. They are finally free to just create.
So I'll leave you with this kind of cool paradox. By setting intelligent limits on your resources, you've actually just removed all the limits on innovation.
So now that your teams are truly isolated and safe, what amazing things are they going to build?